Cool. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Patterns Podcast, Edition 1. And today we're going to be doing a playlist review. No, I don't want to say Edition 1.
Yeah, it's 1.5.
1.5.
More.
All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Patterns Podcast 1.5. We had done this whole podcast already and lost the file. So off to a great start here. Today we're going to be doing a playlist review for Beyond Lo-Fi Volume 1.
Yeah.
So let's just get right into it. Let's just go. I'm gonna play some music here and let's get started.
Hang on. Let me just explain a little bit like what's the playlist about and what was the idea behind this playlist. So Beyond Lo-Fi was, I really like lo-fi hip hop. And sorry, I'm pouring myself a drink. I really like lo-fi hip hop and this kind of vibe, chill vibe. At the same time, I also like music a lot and all kinds of music. And so I stumbled upon and some sort of lo-fi vibe-y kind of music, but with singing and rapping, which kind of halfway, between the idea of lo-fi hip hop and more traditional kind of ways of making music, like with singing and maybe some experimental like ambient or psychedelic. So I had this idea to put together this playlist of music that takes a lot from lo-fi hip hop, but takes it a little bit beyond, strictly what lo-fi hip hop is. So yeah, hence the name Beyond Lo-Fi. So that's for the explanation.
Yeah, I think conventional lo-fi hip hop is what you hear on the 24/7 streams. It's kind of this something textured in a way that makes it lower audio quality. I mean, typically, not all the time, but what's fundamentally, I guess, crucial is that underlying like chill vibe that makes it so you can kind of just do whatever to it, and it's arguably like modern day lounge music.
Yeah, I haven't thought of it like that.
It's definitely our generation's lounge. Yeah.
I forgot about lounge music actually.
We should make some lounge lo-fi beats. Let's do some 404 with some lounge music. That's what I'm sampling next on the 404 for sure.
That's a great idea. So stay tuned for Mackenzie's new lounge lo-fi track.
Yeah. Cool. So I'm gonna just hit play on that first tune. First up here we've got Malana, and the song is called "Belong with Her." So let's just dive right into this and take it from there.
To the rooftop, I wanna see the world when I stop breathing, turning blue. Tell me love is endless, don't be so pretentious.
Just love how this sounds.
Like you do. Take me to the rooftop, I wanna see the world when I stop breathing, turning blue. Tell me love is endless, don't be so pretentious. Like you do. Hey, to the rooftop, I wanna see the world when I stop breathing, turning blue. Tell me love is endless, don't be so pretentious. Like you do.
Really like that this track keeps it simple, and there's a lot of tasteful decisions that I really appreciate. The kids in the background there before this drop, that little bell.
Have you heard the Japanese kind of string instrument at one point?
I think I missed it.
I think it only plays once.
I love that in general about tracks, the little one-time things.
Yeah.
It's like, for me, I'll produce a whole track and then at the very end go through and just drop, like, you know, individual things throughout it.
Yeah.
Sprinkles, yeah. This is a great sample. Oh, that's what you're.
That's the one.
Could be a harp.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find that, like, in terms of sampling and lo-fi, I feel like this kind of hits every mark. You know, it's got the filtered bits, it's got the back and forth. Something that I characterize a lot with lo-fi is, you know, in traditional music, you've got, you know, part A, part B, you know, you've got a verse, you've got a chorus, you've got a bridge, whatever.
Yeah.
But something I like about lo-fi is that you don't tell a traditional story. You do something to that same loop to define the fact that it's a different part of the song. You know?
That's what I love. That's what I love. Because I never really got on board with the, you know, verse, chorus, and I've been trying, you know, and mostly failing because I just get carried away. But this track, like, I reconnect with it, and I think for the first track of the playlist, it's so powerful, and it hits all the right marks, and it sounds perfect. It stays in your head, like the melody, and slightly melancholic, and yeah, it's who made the track?
Malana.
Malana, yeah. I'm not sure. I've heard he got quite a few views on this track on YouTube. I haven't looked it up, but yeah,
for sure, yeah.
That's a great track, and it's 3 minutes, which is, you know, by lo-fi standards, is fairly long.
Yeah, yeah, true. Very, very long, extended edition. We took our whole minute and a half and we duplicated it, man.
Yeah, it's almost a double track.
Yeah, it's good. I like this one.
Yeah, so
cool.
What?
cursedearvy.jpeg and also Linsy.
Yeah, Rich Boys.
Rich Boys. Cool, you ready for this one?
Yeah.
All right, let's do it.
Of course.
Stick into that 2-minute mark.
Yeah.
Smooth talk, one of those guys. I'm not surprised by the way you look into his eyes.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember, but the first time we recorded this podcast, I was saying that this is like the best step out of a traditional lo-fi into beyond lo-fi, because this takes lo-fi and introduces this element of something that people have always been doing, just singing, right? And this, I mean, geez, this could totally be a sample from someone. I don't know this artist well enough to be able to say, but what the chances are is that, you know, this is two people collaborating, a beat maker that makes lo-fi hip-hop and a vocalist. And this excites me and inspires me, especially working with Amina, who is a singer and a really great singer, and it makes me just want to make lo-fi beats and for her to put vocals on them. And
it's a great combination.
Yeah.
Rich boys driving all your white noise. How's your day been? They're not listening.
I feel like I would have added some sort of like mega filtered some vocal in here, but like extra crispy, crunchy.
Yeah.
Oh, I love this track, man.
It is lovely.
Yeah, this is a really great track.
And we were saying, like, in the first recording that got lost in the ether, like, it's not the same sound quality as the first track. It's much more like raw, and at the same time, like, we've had this back and forth as it's not less good. it's just more lo-fi.
Yeah.
You know.
You know, I've seen some. I don't know if I've seen memes or if I've just heard it like floating around online, but you know, I've seen like once at least a meme that's like, if you can't produce, make lo-fi. You know, it's kind of like this. It's kind of it's pretty easy to make lo-fi because you don't even have to worry about the quality, right? And striving for quality is hard in terms of sounds and things like that. Now I produce lo-fi.
Yeah.
I'm guilty, but I do so from a place of coloring it and texturizing it and whatever. And I think lo-fi does get a little bit of a bad rap from certain people because it's a pretty traditionally an easy
Some of it
method.
is lazy.
Some of it is lazy. Some of it is, you know, like especially if you rely too heavily on a sample and then your contribution is like a filter on the sample, it's slowed down, and then you put a kick and a snare. You know, it's like at the end of the day, if it's a 5-step process to make their beat, chances are, and you're sampling from someone, chances are you're just stealing their music. You know,
Yeah,
unless
I don't know.
no,
That's an argument.
yeah, for sure. And I actually do
If it's
sample
good, it's good.
sample
You know?
stuff as well. So exactly, if it's good, it's good.
If it's good, it's good. Like, yeah, but I know what you mean, and people will come after you if you make money with something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although, you know, I read geez, I can't remember who it was. Hold on, I'm gonna look it up really quick. I read this article by whoever it was, and I'm gonna find that information right now. The guy that coined the term plunderphonics.
Never heard the term.
You've never heard the term plunderphonics?
No, what does it mean?
John Oswald coined it. Plunderphonics, and you should look this up. And anybody listening, you should look this up. Look up John Oswald's essay on plunderphonics from 1985. It's essentially an essay about how sampling from other people's music is the equivalent to, for example, when whoever invented the piano, right? Sure, they invented that thing, but it's an instrument and a tool for people to make music on, and arguably it's unavoidable to it's impossible to avoid the endless stream of new music that's coming out. And so, you know, in his essay he argues like you don't have a choice, it's being thrown at you. But you know, like he argues that and plunderphonics refers to music that is sampled. That is what plunderphonics is, sample based music.
Yeah.
So he argues that it's the same as an instrument. You know, if you sample someone's music, it's the same as using an instrument. Now I would personally like when I sample music, I try to either process it enough that it's something original, or take not that much of a sample, maybe maximum like 4 bars kind of thing, 8 bars depending on the sample, and even then process it in such a way that it does kind of get recycled into something completely fresh and new. But I think he kind of pioneered that the sampling era of artistry, or at least he coined the term plunderphonics and kind of put a pin on the map for it. So
yeah, but that last song, I don't think there was much sample in there.
No, and we're talking strictly lo-fi right at this point.
Yeah, because the point I'm trying to make is, yeah, you can have that argument, but I would have the argument that, you know, regardless, like not regardless, because of people have sampled, it created a, you know, new kind of music that you can then play on your instrument. You can play hip hop music, like you can compose, you know, on a piano or on a synth, and it will still be hip hop, and you can even replay samples and chops, and I know I've done that. I like to, you know, play some piano and chop it up, and then learn to replay like the chopped up version on the piano, and so yeah. So now we're listening to music that was most likely composed, but still, you know, takes from hip hop, takes from lo-fi, takes from kind of music that's originally sample based, but then it's composed. It takes the aesthetic and puts on a voice on top of that. And so yeah, I really like this track. Like Rich Boys, very smooth, and I like the tempo. It's very slow. Probably somewhere in the 50s. I like tempos, very low tempo.
Yeah, me too. Especially for relaxing lounge-ish style music, it's really nice to keep it slow so that you can really relax to it.
Yeah.
Although that being said, I know I worked on a track yesterday that was at 60 beats per minute, and I totally worked as if it was 120. Like I shamelessly did not play on the fact that it was 60. So, but that's completely unrelated.
We did move our head on that previous track at double tempo, like you and I.
Oh, did we? I didn't even. I didn't even catch it. Nice. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's what I like to do also is like I do the I've started doing this maybe a couple of months ago. So I do the whole composition say at 75, and then once everything is done, I export like the mixed down version, and then I speed it up. I speed it up to 80 or 82.
Interesting. I go the opposite way.
Yeah, it can work too, but I tend to compose very slow. So if I go the opposite way, it's going to be even slower.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to blend in a little bit more, with the hip hop aesthetic, and kind of tempo, especially like nowadays with the 4/4 and 2/2. Like I'm really getting into the, kind of old school sample chop kind of vibe. So I like my beats right now to be around 80, 85.
Yeah,
Not what I compose, but
I function somewhere between like 83 and 90 usually. Like 83, I find myself at a lot. Like 83 beats per minute is kind of my like sweet spot, I think.
Yeah, 90 is kind of difficult because it will sound old school.
Yeah,
it will sound like early 90s for sure, early to mid 90s.
Yeah.
All right, so
cool. So next up, we've got kimdracula, and the track is Melancholia. Let's just dive right in here.
All right.
The crowd sees me out dancing, carefree and romancing, happy.
It's good. It's good.
Someone new. I'm laughing on the outside, crying on the inside, 'cause I'm still in love with you. They see me night and daytime.
I love this box.
Having such a
offbeat.
They don't know what I go through.
I feel like the hi-hat is a little dry, dull. Like I know that, it's just feels like it could be more fuller, or at least like pull back the filter. Oh, that's where it went offbeat, eh? I'm actually gonna jump back here.
Yeah, go ahead. Completely off. I love it. Now it's on beautiful.
I definitely remember the feedback I had for this one from the actual first podcast. In that I feel like it's this goes just back to what I was saying a minute ago. It's such a heavily they're relying so heavily on that sample, and I can already see the session. You drop the sample in, turn it up, put your beat down. It feels like the only thing is I feel like the beat was dropped and it just was never thought about again. It was like the loop was there, they cut out a couple spots and they're like, yeah, it's fine. Like this beat could have been made in 20 minutes kind of thing, you know what I mean? And
I agree.
It's good, and I really like the sample a lot. I just feel like and at least for me, this is a personal preference. If I'm going to sample something and rely on it heavily, I at least want to kind of like do something to it, like that little that happens midway through. It's nice. The beat going off is nice, but even then, like the whole drum kit in general feels very, very flat, which is okay because it's lo-fi. But I feel like the hi-hat is not. It's not lo-fi. It's just like a random hi-hat sample with 100%, like the exact same velocity every hit. Somewhere for me, it's somewhere off to the right. I don't know if that's just the headphones that I'm wearing or something like that, but
I know what you mean, but
yeah,
but that offbeat section. If it's, I don't know if it's a mistake or if it's
yeah. I was thinking
know?
the same too. Yeah, because it's either tasteful or it's just like they didn't notice, and you know.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, like as I was saying before, when it's good music, it's good music. Like I find, like if it's a mistake, then so be it. But if like it sounds genius, I love it. I want to do this in one of my tracks. I don't know. I
Nice.
don't have the slightest idea how to do something like that.
I think you start with a sample and just take your drum loop and go. Oh.
Yeah, but then how, like, it gets like seamlessly back into tempo at one point.
But I think it pulls out a little bit twice. It pulls out a little bit, then it's off, and then it pulls out a little bit, and then it's on. You know what I mean? Like they
could very well be a very happy accident.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I like the song.
Yeah, and I think it's crucial to remember, and maybe it's because we both produce hip hop music, that we were moving to that. And even if I have, I'll say, intellectualized feedback in that it's very literal and it's very like whatever, I was still moving, and that's the fundamental goal. So
yeah, I mean, so that's cursed ERV, yeah.
No, that track was kimdracula.
Oh yeah, kimdracula. That's easier to say. So if he's listening, or she is listening, if they are listening, well, so there's some good advice, like with the drum kits, with the hats, and that's always something they can improve on. So
yeah,
so that's great. So up next is your song.
Hey, it's me. So this is Mackenzie Gray. The track is Find Your Flow. Since we've developed this, since like we're using this new system for recording this because Skype was a bummer. Pro tip to anybody watching this: Skype dropped the ball. We recorded this whole thing and now it's gone.
Yeah.
I'm using Ring Central Meetings. I know it's reliable. I use it for work. If you're looking to record a video, Ring Central Meetings is great. And I say all of this because now we have the audio playing in the background, so we can actually talk over it, which is great.
That's better.
Yeah, so I'm actually just going to talk about the creative process for this one while we listen to it, why I made certain decisions, because we might as well.
Yeah.
Definitely not necessarily lo-fi, but takes influence from lo-fi. Definitely took a lot of influence from like Mild High Club, Mac DeMarco, Home Shake. He's like really stonery, psychedelic, wavy. You know, I wanted you to feel like this when you're listening. You know.
I like this.
Yeah. Also, this chorus line was like one improv line. I was like, okay, and like this line just came out as one go. I was like, there it is. I'm sticking to it. So.
Love that high melody.
Also, my voice in this track is raspier than my actual speaking voice is, unless I'm like Lemmy and gross. But I woke up early the day after producing this track. I was unsatisfied with the original vocal recordings, so I went back the next day and re-recorded the vocals in the morning with like this grossness and you know, there's like crustiness stuff. I also wanted to, you know, produce a track that had like a standard song format, right? Intro, verse, chorus. This is verse 2. people, different views. Look around and play it cool. Set the standards, set the rules. Also, I love that the beat constantly has me like this. You know, it's not just like a, you know, like there's really like, for me, there's like a, kind of like a, which is the hip hop underlying, you know.
Joyful banger.
Thanks. It's safe to say for me, I ventured into hip hop because I didn't know how to produce drums well. And I wanted to learn how to do that, and so I took hip hop as my route because I know, like, for me, I've always loved hip hop drums and the groove that kind of comes with hip hop. So I wanted to learn how to do that with the other stuff I was doing.
And it's so difficult.
What's that?
It's so difficult. Like, I got into hip hop for all the wrong reasons, but thanks to hip hop, I've been learning how to produce like drum. The sound is kind of some niche.
Yeah. It's so unlike the Sela project that I had to start a new project for it. It's like I didn't want it to fall under the same umbrella because it's not. It's its own thing, you know.
This is not improvised, is it?
No, I mean I took me 99 takes to get that solo, which is shocking, but I wanted it to be perfect. And I say 99 takes, but I was really writing it as I was recording. Like, it started improv, but then I refined and refined and refined. And then after 99 takes, it was like, okay, I've got all the takes I need, kind of thing. I guess the better way to put it is that I improvised 99 times until I nailed the take I was aiming for. Like, I started with like the beginning of it, and then I like evolved. Okay, I like those notes. Oh, okay, those, and it just inched towards the composition until it was like, there it is, you know.
And then it's barely just as good as the very first time you recorded, or you
What's
didn't
that?
record. And then it's barely just as good as the first time you ever played it, and before you even recorded it. Like, I don't know if you get this. Like, when I try to record a solo, when I work on it before I record, it's the best solo.
Yeah.
When I record, I just try to get as close as I can as the very first, but I never get it perfectly.
Dude, for sure. It's always like I sit down, I don't hit record. I'm just like, okay, I'll just like feel something out. And I'm like, oh, okay, I like these little things. But then I'm like, okay, what were those little things that I didn't record just now? And then I have to create something as close as possible to those little things because I'm like,
you don't really get them anymore.
Yeah. Although I've been working more, like I try to work as much as possible with improvised solos. Like as much as possible, I like to hit record and feel it out. But as I like, you know, that one, it has the...
You have to be so good to be able to properly improvise on the record.
For sure. I like to just kind of mess around. Like this one, it started off with the... Like that line, I oh, I'm so out of tune.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Shame.
Shame, yeah. I pick up this out of tune guitar mid-podcast. But the first part of it I knew I wanted because it was like that's where I started my improv. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, this line's really, really good. And then I just built it on there. So
yeah.
All right. What's up next?
Oh, what's with the Red Hot Chili Peppers line?
Which one?
Like on your Find Your Flow, like the chorus.
Which line?
That sounds like Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Which Chili Peppers song?
I don't know.
I'll say in general, the vibe is very like California, driving on the coast, like, you know, maybe smoking a joint, like just chilling vibe. You know, it's really my imagery in my head is like palm trees and like the open road kind of thing, I guess, like on the West Coast, like whatever. But and
Yeah, I
I
know
can,
what you mean. Like
I
kind
think,
of skateboards, like kind of Venice Beach,
yeah.
kind of yeah, like yeah, I know what you mean. It's yeah, I know exactly what you mean, but I cannot express it better than your music actually.
Well, thank you. I like and this is slightly off topic, but I remember, because I'm fascinated with like Zen and Eastern cultures and stuff. I remember reading about how Zen came overseas from like China and Japan and landed on the West Coast specifically. And there was a lot of like Zen institutions that were established in California, and how that kind of bled into the attitude and the like around the the beatnik era when like Jack Kerouac and all those guys were
It definitely influenced music. Like from the
yeah.
synth community, like you have clearly, even to this day, you have a West Coast versus East Coast kind of synth. Like West Coast would be more like experimental, like Buchla modular synth and like patterns and random and stuff like that. And then West Coast would be more like Moog, like traditional music instruments played to play like traditional music.
Yeah.
And you have like heavily like psychedelic Eastern philosophy influenced like kind of synth music. It's very interesting.
Well, and it really influenced the attitude of the people, and like by extension, like I wouldn't be able to say this objectively, but I think that it influenced a lot of that like free spirit attitude that you find on the West Coast. Like people on the West Coast, they they like to surf, they like to live life in the flow, live life in the moment. And
Cool.
I think a lot, exactly, it's like it's this be cool, man, like that attitude. It definitely stems out of like, in my opinion,
almost a cliche. Like you imagine, I've seen this surf movie. It's a comedy. It's a fun movie. It's called Surfer Dude. Yeah, it's about like like this cliche like surfer guy, like blonde hair, and it's fun and it's very like, I don't know. I've never been to California. I was supposed to go there, but I didn't. But you have this image, and even if in other avenues other than artistic, you like, for example, in MMA, you have this fighter, Uriah Faber. His nickname is the California Kid, and when you look at his face, like his blonde hair and that kind of cool, like rock and roll, kind of vibe, and I want to visit California.
Me too. So, speaking of surfers and California, our next track is Beyond the Reef by Dialekt, and I actually just remember from the name of this track that I really appreciated this one. So I'm actually just going to throw this on to continue with our beach coastal attitude. Let's check out a beach coastal track. Man, I need to sample more slide guitar.
What's the instrument in the background? Like marimba, stuff like that? I don't know.
I hear chimes, like a harp line running up, as they do.
Yeah. The drums are so good.
Yeah, they're really nice. Reminds me of Matthew, actually.
Yeah.
Although you mentioned steel or marimba, and I don't know if I hear. Yeah, actually. Oh, yeah, there is. Yeah, it might be a steel drum. It might be marimba. Yeah. Oh, it's so good. I love that sound. Oh. If ever you're doing music composition, you or anybody that hears this, if you're ever doing music composition for someone, for video games, for TV, for anything, and there's some sort of good feeling beach related or water related seed, marimba. Oh, sorry, I cut the track here too soon. Marimba, and steel drums and slide guitar. You got that SpongeBob-y feel, you know, that like
Yeah.
Hawaiian vibe. It's all in the steel drum, marimba, slide guitar. Like, that's it.
Oh, it's such a lovely track, and it's like it's kind of unassuming because
Mhm.
it seems simple, but then as you listen to the track, you're like, oh, this took some work.
Yeah, and what I like about this one in terms of like lo-fi in general is that there's a couple elements that are on the forefront of the mix, and several elements that have such a good position in the song are so back in the mix. Like I didn't even really hear those marimbas until you pointed it out.
Yeah.
But then when I heard them, I was like, oh, it's just like adds to the vibe. And like it's cool to see people making those decisions in their mix to be like either it's unconscious or it's conscious. But if it's conscious, it's this like, oh yeah, you know what, those are great, I'm gonna bring them way to the back, because I do that sometimes too. I'm like, oh, I
Yeah.
want like the nerds that are listening to hear this like little tiny detail and to go, oh, I like that little thing you did, and for me to go like, yeah, that's it, you know.
Yeah, I'm all about that.
Yeah,
Like,
man.
and yeah, and you were mentioning in the previous recording, as even the aesthetic is different from your traditional lo-fi hip hop. You know, it being, you know, kind of Hawaiian, coastal vibe. It goes away from, you know, maybe kind of vaporwave-ish influences, and brings in something that's more fresh.
Yeah.
And it's not heavy, it's very light, but it's so well produced. It's too short. And the next one was
Next one is Calmadò, and we've got Hikari by Calmadò. So
yeah,
let's give it a listen. I'm going to turn the volume up here a little bit. Love the way this track starts off.
such a contrast with the other one. This track feels like, within the playlist, it feels like coming home to the first track. And you have this darker vibe.
Or it's like the true midway point for it, right?
Yeah.
Ooh, I like that. What? That like high voice that like follows the voice every second time it does that line. Like great. Oh, maybe not. Oh, that one.
Yeah. I know which one. Like, at the beginning, there's such a build-up to this moment. Very subtle. And now the military snare.
That one?
Yeah.
I think it's a hi-hat actually, like a loosely open hi-hat.
Yeah, it's possible.
But it assumes the role of a military snare, right?
Yeah. Is it over?
Yeah, it's the end. It goes out the way it came in. Wouldn't it be really funny if any of these artists watch this video and they're just like, man, stop talking over my track. I just want people to hear it. Like, some of these tracks.
Put the playlist in the description of the video.
Yeah, people can check it out.
Yeah.
I like that one.
Yeah, I like it better than the last time, because it's maybe because I have the headphones. Like, I hear more of the details, and it's very like the very first part of the track. There's such a subtle like build up to that one break, and then you finally get into the break, it doesn't last. Pulls you right back in, and with that kind of hat, snare, military thing, and it's very intense. And I like it. I like it.
Yeah, and it comes back to what I was saying earlier about like lo-fi in general, how it doesn't follow song format. It just takes like a loop or like one or two loops, and it plays on that entirely. And I think if you were to look for it when you listen to lo-fi, like if you were to go on the stream, you catch that most lo-fi music is just a single or maximum like two loops with like variations in the mixing. Creative mixing, that
lots
is.
of details.
Yeah.
I think that's what I like about it. It's very like minute, small details, and I know it takes time because I really like details. You know, composing and arranging, and it takes such a long time. You have to love doing it. You have, and then you have to also learn when to stop working on the track, and it's very difficult and challenging. But at the same time, when you end up with such a great track, I think it's worth it every minute, every hour, every day.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah. So that's, I think the next song is the longest of the playlist.
Yeah, Simplistic Scientists, it's Waterfall, yeah.
So I think that's a collective from the UK.
Oh, I definitely remember this one, yeah. I really like the bass line of this one.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing, the bass line is perfect. It's actually more like assuming the role of melody.
For sure. I mean, it is. It's fully assuming the role of melody. I definitely remember we were talking about this one last time that we brought up. Well, I brought up Sweet Valley, that song Bros Beyond, because just like this song, it uses a single loop or you know, something, but the way that you can tell the story, kind of like that little DJ moment that just happened, that like little DJ spin, is through the little mixing techniques you do throughout the track. And especially if you're dealing with like a long period of time, like this track's 5 minutes. I love the idea of looping a single track for 5 minutes. It's just like, for the listener, it's important. Well, important is relative. It's important to keep them engaged. Yeah. And with one loop, it can only get you so far, you know? Like here.
At the same time, like, I was listening to this masterclass from Jacob Collier, and he was talking about some music he was listening to. Oh, hang on.
It's still really good, don't get me wrong. I love it all the same.
But yeah, he was talking about, you know, the importance of waiting in music and patience. You know?
For sure. But there's a difference between waiting and patience and like letting something be in suspense or build or whatever the waiting looks like. And you know, like I hate to see it as a producer, but when I picture this session, I picture there's like two main loops that are just like duplicated like way too many times, you know, like this loop, it's duplicated like 32 bars or something like that, you know, and or like 16 or 32 bars depending on how you're counting it.
It doesn't really have to be that long, though.
Exactly.
It makes a point by being long.
Yeah, but that being said, it really depends on the artist and the intention of the music, right? Because, you know, like sometimes I create music for video games and I take a full direction because of that, and I can see someone, maybe even the people that made this track, being like, hey, you know, like, let's just make a track that's really great, like ambience, and like you throw it on, you don't think about it, whatever. My only thing that I'm not stoked about is just the length that it's drawn on. It's like you can really get away with doing this easily, but for 5 minutes, if you were to, like I said, sometimes I can't help but see the session when I hear a song, and for this one, it's like like so much of the same loop, and then the second loop, and then so much of that first loop again, that it's like the little extra effort to create additional loops or to create additional mixing things to transition, like drops. Sorry? Yeah, variations of some sort, like something. Just throw even a sample, like it cuts, sample, chopping, drop it, do like a you know, some little things. It takes it a long way, you know. It like I said, like one of the tracks
that you have such a great loop.
Dude, exactly.
Maybe you can drop the sample altogether, just have the drums and the bass by themselves. Filter it, you know, maybe use the isolator like on the isolator.
Exactly, yeah. I think that it's
the same track but cut every sequence in half.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And this sample's really cool, but it would have been super cool if we dropped into this at some point midway and then came back to that sweet bass line, because that bass line is sick.
But sometimes you get carried away when you, I know that used to be a problem of mine, and maybe it still is to some extent. Like you get carried away with your track and you really don't realize it's going on for too long. You don't want to drop like that one moment, and then you don't really want to read out, you know, and just keep the best parts, and then you end up with a 4, 5, 6 minute track, 6 minutes long track.
Yeah.
And
which is fine. I mean, like a 5-minute track, I have no like beef with any track of any length. Like it's never the length that's the problem. It's just like if I had one loop and I played that one loop for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
For me, like what I love about music fundamentally is that it's like this complicated story and dance that like happens over time, where nothing's ever the same and it's always changing as it carries forward, and there's always elements that are like fluctuating, and it's more of like it's more like watching you know, watching something in nature. I like that about music. Like if you go into the woods and you just observe nature, it's never going to be the same. You see animals, the sounds, like the sights and the sounds are never repeat. And even if there's, yes, the same bird making the sound, it's fundamentally different every time. The relationship it has with everything else is fundamentally different every time. Whereas when things are predictable and consistent in that kind of a sense, for me, and you know, not obviously this isn't like a hard thing, that is like how I perceive it or experience it, but it just reminds me of any sort of pattern that is stagnant, you know, like getting up and going to work every day, working 9 to 5, doing the same thing every day. It's this routine. It's when music lacks that fluctuation, that dance, I'm much more inclined to be to hit next, because it's dull and it lacks that life, that vibrancy. It's like you can hear in the sound that someone was like, wow, this is a sick loop. And I have a few tracks that I never released because I was like, wow, this is a sick loop, but I have no idea what to do with the rest of it. And I don't feel like I can justify just looping one pattern and then fading in and fading out, you know.
You could try. Like it can, like, if you like, in the sense of maybe that's something you can convey, this repetitiveness within a track, and that's fine. There's no wrong way to do it. But now I agree with you in the sense that for the listener, if this is a track that's meant to be listened to, it's probably too long.
Yeah, and you know, when I say anything at all, it's never like it has to be this way or it shouldn't be this way, but it's more that like as time goes on and I produce more music, I learn how to curate an experience for the listener, so that when they put on a pair of headphones or they plug it into their speaker or they play it from their phone, when they play it, the work is done for them, and there's zero like hiccups in the work that allows for them to have a dull moment or to feel like something's off. And that's both compositionally and in the mix, right? Like the goal of mixing is to iron out all of the things and bring out all the good things. You iron out all the flaws and you bring out all the good things and you're like, boom, good. But for me,
with arranging.
Exactly. The same thing with arranging. If it's not dynamic, when I started producing, I didn't care at all about what other people thought about my producing. I was like, oh, I love these tracks. And one of my first tracks that I released under Aesthetic Love Master, which was my name before that I released under, was literally a sound of a squeaky door. Just playing at a bunch of different, and like the drum, it was just like a bunch of different pitches of a squeaky door going, and the drums were just the worst stock drums. And then halfway through the track, I just cut everything out, and I've got this sample of this woman speaking in Spanish for like 45 seconds, but I dropped it down an octave, so it's just like, and I don't speak Spanish, but it carries on for about a minute, and then it transitions back into the squeaky door. And when I released it, I was like, oh yeah, this is just like, it's experimental, it's whatever, and like blah, blah, blah. And the reality is that like, unless someone's willing to listen to it under the absolute pretext that they're specifically looking for things that like are kind of cringy, it's just that. It's not something that like, as much as it's like unique and no one's ever going to do a squeaky door sample track like that ever.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to listen to it. Yeah. There's a reason for that, exactly. As a producer and as a musician and as an artist on any level, the goal is to curate something for someone. And depending on what that is for you, what it is you feel like you're trying to convey, that's different for everyone. Yeah. But when there's a lack of effort on the curation side, in that you don't take into consideration the audience that you're looking to get your music to, the unfortunate reality is that it's going to fall short. And geez, I mean, I'm sure you and I have both released a billion tracks that we were so stoked about because they were so good to us, and that nobody cared about. One or two people sent you a message, hey, that's a cool track. That's it. And then you're like, wow, I was sure that this was the banger that would start it off for me, and I would be able to release music and have an audience.
And nobody cares.
And nobody cares at all. And
then the thing that you didn't really want to release, but I might just as well release it, but it's not really good. And then people are so stoked about it, like, oh, this is sick. Like, really? Like, no, it's not. Like,
yeah.
I could, like, story of my life, man. I hate it. Like, I'm wondering all the time how many of my unfinished, unpolished tracks that I will never release are actually like $1 million track. Like stuff that I really don't like, I don't want to release, I don't feel that it's any good, and like a story of my life. So, and some tracks, like, I spent so much time and just nobody cares.
Well, I think it's important to remember that 99.99% of all people that are listening to music don't know the first thing about music other than the fact that they like it or they don't. And if you're curating to 99.99% of the population and they don't know what's like, I love my mother because she's my point of reference. For whether or not something I do is good, because I'll send her something, and if her response is, it's cool, I don't get it, but it's cool, then I know it's not good. Because no disrespect, but that basically means like, great job, bud, like, keep it
At
up.
Least
but
not
it's
smoking drugs.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it depends on the drugs. But whereas like if I send her something and she's like, wow, I really love this one, it's either yes or no. There's no middle point. And it's the same with pretty much everybody. It's like if someone's listening to your song, your listener shouldn't have to do any work at all. Nothing. You should give them a final. It's like you go to the Apple store to buy an iPhone. You go there, you don't expect to have to build an iPhone. You don't expect to have to try and understand it conceptually or existentially to buy an iPhone. You go there because you're looking for the... Well,
they are selling stuff that you have to put together.
Sure, but they walk you through it. They curate the experience, right?
Yeah.
They curate it, and if you went to an Apple store and they were like, yeah, you know, like it doesn't have a microphone, but like just hear me out, you know, well, no one's going to give a shit about what you have to hear out. I need a microphone to use my phone.
Yeah.
It's not about being conceptual and innovative. It's about, does it work, and does it work for me right now? Does it hit the spot? And that's where music is.
Or like headphone jack, you know? Oh wait.
Yeah, dude, exactly. It's like, oh wait, by the way, here you go. We took that out now. So great.
Yeah.
So I think that like one of the biggest lessons I've learned, and I've been producing for maybe only like 6 or 7 years, really, but I've been doing music over half my life, and well, only whatever. But what the biggest lesson I've learned is that, well, a few big lessons. The industry is ruthless, and just because you think something is good does not mean that you're going to blow up and become famous.
Yeah.
And if you're not willing to curate something for the general public, then it's not going to take off unless you are the king of a niche, or unless you fall into a niche that is pioneering something new, in which case it might not take off right away, might take off in the future, which is the less likely path. Now, I'm not saying conform, sell your soul, do stuff that's palatable. I'm saying take into consideration every decision and everything that's going on as a listener.
That makes sense. Yeah.
As a listener, imagine that you hit play on Spotify for what you're composing right now. Does it work? Is there anything in the way of it being perfect? Anything in the way of whatever? And you know what? Chances are you're still going to release it. Still might not get any views. But that's the unfortunate reality of the industry, is that you have to keep at it and keep refining and keep polishing and keep learning and refining your methods, and eventually you create something that's quality, something that, you know, you don't have to, your process has to become in such a way that what you do naturally is what the listeners are looking for. And the only way you can do that is by growing and being more objective about what you do. Being a little bit less, this is really cool, I really like this, and asking yourself, will other people like this? Is this something that I could see someone grooving to? And sharing it, like I share with you and Jeff, and pretty much you and Jeff are like two of the main people, if not like some of the only people that hear the music I produce, because I know you guys like know these things, not just as listeners, but you know what listeners look for in music, because you are listeners and you're producers. You know what I mean? So your feedback helps guide me in, oh yeah, you should make these decisions, so that I become a better producer.
And we all become like. I don't know. I don't have a valuable input to that, because I'm still kind of on the fence. Because it has to, like, my perspective on that is that music has to represent you in some way, even though it's not really you. Well, it's confusing, I know, but like, I don't know. I honestly don't know. I like to do like bizarre stuff a lot. I like to experiment, and I think it's pretty cool. And some people enjoy it, but most people most likely won't. And at the same time, like, we've been talking about lately about, you know, harmony, the harmonic series, and the tension resolution, and then the traditional, you know, chord structure like 2-5-1s and whatnot. And it's been a few months now that I've been reconciliated with stuff like that, because now I understand why it's there, why this works. So it's kind of coming full circle with me, like doing the music that I really want to do, but at the same time embracing more traditional. It could be song structure, it could be chords, like harmonic contents. So I'm still not quite there at, you know, thinking about the listener as my priority, but still,
And
I think I'm getting there.
yeah, and I do want to digress just a little bit to say, to really place emphasis on, I'm not saying do something that isn't right for you. Always follow your intuition in terms of your styling choices and your decisions, but only until that process becomes harmonious with this ability to create something that's palatable will you create something that's both harmonious with yourself and harmonious with the world external. And I think that that's the true path, because if you get to a point where your art is both harmonious with yourself and the world wants it, well, then all you have to do is just keep being in harmony with yourself and creating art, and the world's going to take it because they're looking for it, you know?
Yeah, but I think the it's very important to keep the personality.
Of course,
strong, and that's you know, especially in hip hop, you have the beat market right now, and you have, you know, Drake style beat and this style beat, and people want to make beats like someone else, and maybe they're happy with that, and I'm not criticizing like what they are doing. If they're happy with that, I'm happy. I'm glad that they are. But in the purely like musical sense, like you have major artists, none of them, zero, have ever thought, oh, I'm going to make music like this guy, and went on to this path. They all have something that's unique to them, and they found a way to have it in tune with the world, as you were saying. And I think that's the correct path for your music to be meaningful, the most meaningful. It has to be meaningful to you, and at the same time, it has to be meaningful to the world.
Yeah, because otherwise you're going to end up creating something that's work to do. Yeah. It's something you can do, and you have a process down, and you can go and you can sit down and there's a formula and you can make money off of it. But
it's not going to be fulfilling.
Yeah, exactly. For me, if I was selling beats and making money, I'd love that. That would be great. Yeah. Buy my music if you want, sure. But to do music that I'm not stoked about is something that's really challenging for me. Like even the music I've done for educational content recently, if you listen to those tracks, man, those are just Sela tracks. Those are just, especially some of them, I'm just like, those are just Sela tracks, just with basic chord and melody structure and song structure. It's like, it's my down. Yeah, it's my style, but like watered down for the general public, you know?
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah. Who knows?
That was a good rant. I think we should get back on track here a little bit.
All right.
So this is that track that has a bunch of artists in it, and I can't even see all of them here.
I think I can. Hang on. I just went on to the next track, actually, the following track. So what we have is Simber, PixelWax, Yago, Mann, Pueblo, Vista, and then it says Hello Spring.
That's 2020, by the way.
Is it 2020?
It's 2020.
Why isn't because it's 1,000.
It's thousands, yeah.
Oh, all right. Sorry. Low Hop Anthology. So the track song name is Warmth. That's 2020?
I think so. I'm looking it up. Yeah, it's 2020, yeah.
All right.
I guess the MM stands for 2000. C is 100, M is 1,000, and then the X's are tens.
Oh, yeah. It has to be.
So anybody watching just got a little brief lesson on Roman numerals. We can thank Simber, PixelWax, Yago, Mann, and whoever's name I. Yeah. Thank you for that. Cool. Let's spin it.
That was nice.
Man, you know a track's good when neither of us say anything throughout the whole thing.
So many things are happening in this track. Like,
this track is, for me, perfect. There's like the way that the mix tells a story, the fact that it's very dynamic. I love the video gamey elements too. I love video game sounds at all, like video game 8-bit synths.
It sounds a little bit like Sila.
It does. I feel that too. And I remember from the first podcast we did for this playlist, I remember referring to City Girl specifically on this one for the vocal synth. City Girl uses a very similar, if not that exact vocal synth in their beats. So City Girl is really cool for that stuff, but I think a lot of the stylings of this one pays tribute to a lot of the elements of lo-fi that I like the most. And my biggest influences are like organic, real, clean, crisp, clear samples. I've sampled Birds like 30 times in tracks because I just love it. Like a really nice beat, a really good mix, and then like I said, like video game sounds. Like it's just like all of my favorite elements thrown into one and done well. So love this track.
Yeah. Nothing to say. It's pretty much perfect.
So next up here we've got Lakani, and this is Madisyn Shipman. This was a really good one. I really like this one. So let's give it a play.
Only time that I see you is on TV. I have been wondering where there you gon' see me. You looking good, shawty, you looking good. That day that I saw you, I'm telling you, you really should. Me telling you where your heart should be. Not with melancholy, but how about a canopy? Support all of your dreams. Although it seems too difficult, distance and decimals, scientific notation. Baby, play with my patience. I freaking love it when you wear Asics. Kinda reminds me of the things I used to say basic, and this is crazy. I am 17 and you'll be 16, baby. Quick question, can you be my lady? I will be there when you be screaming, save me. And you won't need to worry, I'll scurry quick to your heart in a split second. I will be that dude that never get you second guessing. I see you pass on the fire, on the blood of my veins. Like you're a baby, it's shit and pain, but I love it, it's strange. I never get this intentionless. If it's money, I'm game. With you in this, I get this change I desire. I can't be crystallized. I would not care for much, I simply pass straight cost.
That rim shot, man.
Yeah, no kidding. It's more like a knock on a door, you know. Yeah, I love this track, man. This is really cool. Lakani, shout out to you.
Road
really
stop sound. Like you get me when you put some roads into a track. I'm on board. It's the best musical instrument ever invented.
Yeah.
I need to get one again. I used to have one for years, 88 Mark 1. I need to get one.
I'm sure you'll get one in there eventually.
Yeah, for sure.
Something I like about this track is, well, first of all, this comes back full circle to that other track we were listening to earlier, Rich Boys by cursedearvy.jpeg and Linsy, in that it's going beyond lo-fi, you know. It's a lo-fi beat. It could have just been a really great instrumental, but no, you did something unique with it. You put rap on it, and
it's such a tasteful way. Like it's a little bit. It reminds me of Chance the Rapper, and at the end when you get the lower pitch voice, like you have this contrast between this very bright, like sample chop Rhodes sample chop, very kind of laid back and very light. Background, and you have the dark voice on top of that, and I love that.
Me too.
it's you have this contrast, and it brings a new meaning to a dark voice,
Hmm.
a new way. And of course, I'm sure I've heard this before, um, but still, it's quite ballsy and
Well done.
like yeah, very well done. Like
Yeah.
that's
Lakani, if you are watching this or listening to this, there's this track. It's a collab with Evie and Ben Beal. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Evie, but she's like one of the pioneers of lo-fi, and or at least the lo-fi that we know today. I think a lot of it, came from Evie. She's one of those, pillars in the community. And Ben Beal's a rapper as well. I know they were on tour sometime, I think in fall or last summer or something. They were on tour together and they produced a little EP together. And there's this track, Love the Feeling, that they did together on the album Lone. Check that out. It's really
yeah.
great.
It's in the
Super.
playlist actually.
Yeah. So if you're checking, yeah, it's down at the bottom.
Yeah.
Sweet. Next up, we've got 420 in Roman numerals. Once again, we've got one V. Oh, we missed one?
Yeah, Spicer. Why don't you change?
Oh, okay. Wow. I take it back. Spicer, why don't you change? All right. Let's do it.
You've heard all this, you as a human being. Why don't you change? What prevents you?
That first chord is Zeus.
Ask that question, not verbally or merely intellectually as an entertainment, but ask that question more seriously and deeply. What's your answer?
Oh man, this voice is so familiar to me. It's driving me crazy.
What's your answer to this problem that human beings have lived this way for millennia upon millennia? Why haven't they changed? Why haven't you, who are listening now, why haven't you changed? You know, if you don't change, what the consequences are. You'll be nationalistic, you'll be tribal, insular, isolated, and therefore having no relationship globally, fighting, building up more and more armaments, destroy each other. Now, why don't you, if you're at all serious in this matter, why don't you ask yourself that question? Why am I, a human being who have been through all this, why haven't I changed? What would be your answer? Either you are not serious, you want to live a very, very superficial life, and that superficiality temporarily satisfies you, or you really don't care. As long as you have immediate pleasures, immediate satisfactions, you really don't care. You don't care for your children if they are murdered. If you really have no deep love, affection for them, if you had, you would prevent all wars. So apparently, none of these things mean anything to you. Or probably you are so deeply conditioned psychologically, and unless there is freedom from that conditioning, you will go on this way.
I like that track. It reminds me a lot of the original stuff I did under Sila, because I sampled a lot of like gurus and Alan Watts and Ram Dass and Osho and Sadhguru and all those guys.
I disagree. Like, oh, you will disagree with me rather. Like in the previous recording, you were making the argument, and it makes sense that the track is here to support the voice. And as I'm listening to this track once again, my perspective is the voice is here to support like this beautiful, like gorgeous chord progression, and perfect sounding like Rhodes again. to me, that's the story of the track.
I would not disagree with you. I would actually go as far as to say that they're partnered. You know, I don't think that one. I think if you heard the if you heard the track without the sample, I'm sure it would still be really beautiful and nice, but lacking something. And I'm sure if you heard just the sample, it would be good, but it doesn't have the same impact. Like the chords make the message have an impact, you know, and the message makes the chords have that role. You know, they're codependent on each other.
I think the chords and the message, like the message by itself, is I find it rather dark.
Yeah, it's
the chords make it like you have this balance, right? And we always we tend to often discuss, you know, current events and stuff, and there's this inherent perfection to life, and I think on one hand you have the message like, oh, that can be quite dark, but under that underlying you have everything's going to be all right.
Yeah.
You know, and that's because there's not much tension within the chord structure. There's some, you know, some minor, you know, but eventually it's everything's going to be all right. Even though, you know, we haven't really changed for that long, and we should, like, we have to, but everything's going to be all right.
Well, and I think that's why it's kind of like a partnership, you know. I almost feel like, you know, this is almost certainly not the case, but I almost feel like the person that's speaking, you know, went to someone that makes nice, beautiful lo-fi music and was like, hey, I've got this thing, can you put this thing over it? You know, the message is kind of like this, but I'm looking for people to interpret it in this way. Can you do this like style? And then they're like, yeah, sure. And they put the chords down. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's a partnership in this track. They're both like very codependent, I think. And
yeah.
I think in the last time we recorded this podcast, the only reason I said that is because the instrumental is very, very minimal. You know, there isn't much going on beyond the chords, but you know, less is not bad. Less can be more, and I think in this case,
there's still plenty though. Like
there's still plenty, yeah.
Like the clock ticking. This is brilliant.
Yeah.
I would say just I'm not sure whether it's sampled or not, but I don't know. I would have to listen to it more carefully, but like the keyboard, like it sounds amazing, and it sounds like not just the chords, the sound is amazing, and the I don't can you put it again maybe
the track?
Yeah
sure. Yeah.
It's not that long anyway.
You've heard all this, you as a human being. Why don't you change? What prevents you? If each one of us asks that question, not verbally or merely intellectually as an entertainment, but ask that question more seriously and deeply, what's your answer?
The clock is the snare.
What's your answer to this problem that human beings have lived this way for millennia upon millennia?
The clock is the snare.
Why haven't they changed? Why haven't you, who are listening now, why haven't you changed? You know, if you don't change, what's the consequences are? You'll be nationalistic, you'll be tribal, insular, isolated, and therefore having no relationship globally, fighting, building up more and more armaments to destroy each other. Now, why don't you, if you're at all serious in this matter, why don't you ask yourself that question? Why am
it's really great.
A human being who has been through this? Why haven't I changed? What would be your answer? Either you are not serious, you want to live a very, very superficial life, and that superficiality temporarily satisfies you, or you really don't care. As long as you have immediate pleasures, immediate satisfactions, you really don't care. You don't care for your children if they are murdered. If you really have no deep love, affection for them,
It's extremely weird.
you would prevent all wars. So apparently, none of these things mean anything to you. Or probably you are so deeply conditioned psychologically.
Even the silence is...
Unless there is freedom from that conditioning, you will go on this way.
Like the silence at the end is very meaningful.
Yeah. It's very well curated, you know. Like I was saying before about curation in general, this one I feel really hits the mark as a curated experience.
It's minimalistic for sure, but like I still cannot tell. It feels like the keyboards are played, but sometimes they feel like chopped samples. Like
yeah, but I mean, like you know how to do that.
Yeah.
You know, you could write piano. Sometimes you write piano and then you chop it. Like it could be either. You know.
Yeah, it could be both.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can definitely relate because I would definitely see myself playing something like that for sure. I like the harmony. I like the sound, and it's gorgeous. It's really, really gorgeous.
Man, you must be getting tired. What is it? Like almost 1:30 there?
Oh yeah, 1:22. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
That's fine. I was supposed to do to have a rehearsal tomorrow, but it got moved back one day. So
cool.
That's fine. I'm making it. Yeah.
Right on.
So, my main 420. So
420.
he's a kid from Mexico. I would assume he is somewhat of a beginner. I wanted to include this track because, let's hear it.
Sure. Yeah. And we'll talk about it once we're done, I guess.
Yeah. Like the loop. That's fun. Saxophone is kind of cheesy, but I like it. It kind of works for me.
I like it. I don't like how much it gets used.
I don't mind it that much. Like, what bothers me the most is the drums.
The drums bother me for sure. I appreciate that the saxophone's harmonized here too. So I appreciate the saxophone for its whole picture, the bigger picture.
Yeah.
But yeah, the drums feel very like
quantized.
Very quantized, but I really don't like the sounds and how flat they are. You know,
I know what you mean. But there's an idea here with the hats rolls, and I think I was telling you the other time. This may be, one of the early tracks of someone really talented.
Well, totally, 100%.
It's original. It sounds already like unlike many other things. It sounds quite unique.
Yeah, and there's a lot of little techniques in there that are really great. Like the gating is really nice. It's definitely better than the first stuff I was producing. That's for sure. Like the squeaky door stuff. It's better than squeaking doors. That's for sure. But it's good. But I remember reading sometime a long time ago, probably a long time, like 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Just about sample choice and how sample choice is kind of everything. It's like the sounds you choose are like a lot of what gives the attitude, but also what defines your character. And drums are, for me, the like heart of the music, because
they are so difficult also.
Yeah, and they really set the context. Like that track I was showing you earlier, that's like trap. It's only trap because I decided it was trap, and now it's a trap track. But if I didn't do that with the drums, I could have taken any direction with the drums.
Yeah.
That would have defined it as something else.
But we were just saying before, like how difficult it is to get the, because there's nothing like in hip hop drums. There's nothing you can point at. You know, of course, there's some mixing involved that you can learn and do better. But when it comes to this drum sounds and the samples, it's all about context.
Yeah.
And I feel that's what's difficult, because you can have one drum set that will sound amazing on one particular sample and sound like shit on something else.
Totally. It's the texture of the sounds that you choose, whether it be for melodic or rhythmic purpose, is absolutely everything. It's like painting it's like doing a painting and choosing, having like really natural organic pastel colors and then having like a neon orange in the middle. There's this extreme contrast that makes it so that you can't appreciate the bigger picture of what's going on. Everything needs to be curated in such a way that all of the sounds are, the way I see it is like this. I'm just going to hit play on this track I have queued up on my session here, just from the beginning. This sample. It's very like, it sets a tone, it's telling the story, and then you're going to hear the second instrument come in here in a sec. It's kind of got this like, I don't know, like almost like goofy, like haunted vibe. But both, both the sounds are saying the same thing. And all drums aside, the third instrument that comes in is this.
Yeah.
It's this like, I chose the sounds because they're all playing into that haunted vibe that first sound defined. And then it comes in with this like harp that follows that line, which extends it just slightly outside of that in this way that like this same harp instrument, if I were to solo this in any other context, well, the key sets the tone, obviously. The key is very mysterious and eerie. But the sound could be used in a beautiful context, or it could be used in this like Luigi's Mansion style mystery, like.
Yeah, but at the same time, contrast can be a tool also, but it has to have like, that's one thing. Every element that you make into your music, it has to have a meaning. It has to have a place. It's not just put drums because you have to put drums. You have to put the right drums in the right way, and this is very difficult. And it seems maybe it may seem to the viewer or listener that we are this kind of experts of making music. We're not. Like, we're just like everyone else, and we're trying to make the best music that we can. A difference with that, we might have been doing this for maybe a longer time than maybe most, or many at least. And having these conversations and trying to listen to music together and identify, and this is all part of the process. So people who made these tracks, if you listen to the podcast, you may get something out of it, but we will get something out of this also,
Absolutely.
by listening to your music. And all right, because it's not something that you just learn to do and then you do it right all the time. It's you have to make many shit music to have one track that sounds good. Then you go back on making experiments and tracks that you maybe get almost finished, but then you kind of miss it again, and then you start from scratch and again and again and again.
Yeah.
And sometimes you release, like, you try to release the best, but sometimes, as we were discussing, like, you're really into a track and then you release it and nobody cares, and it's very difficult to hit the mark. So yeah, well, it's very important to keep trying.
And
No?
to your point about us not being experts, I would go as far as to say that the only way that anybody is defined as an expert here in this world of music and sound engineering and producing and whatever is not necessarily directly correlated to the success that they achieve, because you can be successful and not an expert.
Yeah.
For me, I knew I was a good sound engineer, for example, a good mixing engineer, when all of my decisions became conscious decisions. I knew the steps I was taking. And with music, I'd argue it's the same. You know, it's, you can, if you are making, if every decision you are doing has that purpose, has that conscious, oh, I'm choosing this because this, I'm doing this because this, you know, it's not that you have to explain it to anybody. It's not like you owe the world that.
Yeah, but you
It's,
know why you do this.
exactly. It's conscious decisions, you know, like for me,
Purposeful.
yeah, and for me, confidence to be able to say like I speak with confidence when I talk about music or producing or anything within this scope of, I don't know, conversation at least. I speak with confidence for the sheer fact that I am present during the listening process and I make conscious decisions. And coming back to the curating and experience conversation, it's when you make the conscious decisions and you stop overlooking unconscious decisions, little tiny things. You know, for example, maybe you're producing a track and you're using one loop too many times and you think, it's okay, I'll just duplicate it this extra couple times, no one will notice. It's an unconscious decision. It's not done for the greater good of the track. It's done for convenience or laziness.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the listener does notice.
Yeah.
So when everything becomes on from the whole end of the spectrum, from very original conception in composing through layering, melody, harmony, rhythm, sounds across the frequency spectrum, whatever. When it comes down to it, if your composition and the way that you mix the composition from a sound engineer standpoint is riddled with conscious decisions and nothing is overlooked, people can tell that you're a professional, that you are an expert.
Yeah, and this makes also a great argument for learning about music, learning about mixing, learning about the technique, learning about music theory, because these are all like, if you, it's not that you're just going to use like music theory to craft you're still going to make your music the same way, but by understanding better what's happening, you can take it further, you can refine it, you can make it better, you can it opens door for possibilities. And maybe if you don't have like music theory, a lot of practice, a lot of techniques down, you get stuck and you have this great idea, you have this great loop, and then you don't know exactly how you can, you know, take it further. And in these kind of instances, if you understand what's happening in this loop, what makes it great, you can also understand how to make it better.
Exactly.
You know, and how to refine it, and why, what works in that loop, what can you do as a variation, what tools can you use, you know, and you can experiment then, and then use your ears, use you know, a reference of music that you listen to. But it's very important, and I totally agree, like you have to have music happens as a result of you being in tune with something that's deeper, but you need to understand how this works. And this is why, like, I wouldn't have dreamt music theory, the harmonic series. I've been making music for more than 20 years before I came across the idea of the harmonic series, you know. And when I did, it was like, wow, like now I can identify what's happening more easily in other people's music, and I can identify what's happening in my music. I can take it further, you know, because I understand now, you know, what music is made of, like the fundamental building blocks of music, and why it works. And of course, you can make music in opposition to that, and that's fine. It's still art, it's still music to some extent. But as you were mentioning, like being in tune with the world, then you have to understand how music itself is tuned into the world, you know, by the physical phenomenon that makes up, you know, vibrating objects and how they behave, you know, and where the harmonics come from. What does a fifth mean? What does a major or minor third mean? And why do they mean that? You know, that's important stuff. And your music is not going to suffer because you learn music theory. It's not going to suffer in the same way. It's not going to suffer if you learn, you know, some mixing and you know, it's a whole. You know?
Another way to put it is like if you are a pastry chef and you're really good at making pastries, well, it doesn't hurt to learn more about how you can make pastries better. How do you make the dough fluffier? How do you make it flakier? How do you do this? And if you don't know how to do any of those things, well, it's not like if you learn how to make a flaky dough that you're no longer going to be able to make pastries the same. In fact, quite the opposite.
Yeah.
If you have the situation where you need to make flaky dough, you know how. It's there's an expression my father used to say, you know, and it kind of applies to anything that you're learning, but my father's also a musician, and he used to say, yeah, I never told you that.
No.
So is my brother, actually. My brother studied jazz in school as a drummer. He's a really, really talented drummer, composer, guitarist, singer, does metal screaming, does everything. And my father as well is he used to be fundamentally, like, he started as a singer, then he became a drummer in the 70s, played in a bunch of bands and stuff, and then he plays guitar and sings, but he can play, we all play all instruments, let's just put it that way. We could all do all of it. It runs in the family. But he used to have this expression, you know, every time you learn something new, it's like getting a new tool for your toolbox. You know, I always have my virtual toolbox right here with me with all my music references and my sound references and, you know, my experience and my conversations like this that I've had with others. Every time you do something, you're putting stuff in that box, and whether you like it or not, whenever you're working on music or anything, you pull those things out. And it's when that toolbox is so full of such, you know, experience and perspective that comes from, you know, just being open and broad with what you can absorb and learn, the sky's the limit. You know, like I said, I don't make trap music, but I sat down and I made this little bass line, and I was like, oh yeah, let's make this into a trap beat. I know how to do that, even though I don't have an output for it because I don't release trap music. I was just like, to hell with it, here's a trap song, you know. So knowledge is empowering, it's not debilitating.
There is, however, one caveat.
Debilitating. Sorry, I had to stop myself. Debilitating is not a word. I think it's debilitating. And even then, debilitating. Now I'm second guessing myself. Grammar nerds, correct me in the chat if we have a chat. I don't know. This is episode 1. We'll figure out.
Comments,
Correct me. Correct all of us.
Down there.
Down below.
So I was saying, there's one caveat, is that you need to keep in mind that you're still using the tool to make music. You're not. It's not because you have many tools that you have to use all of them all of the time. You still need to be making music first, and because it's easy to get lost especially when you learn music theory. But it's also the case when you buy a lot of gear. You know, you get sucked into, you know, the technical aspect, the theoretical aspect, and then you forget to make music, to just make music, express yourself.
Yeah,
that's the point, you know. And so it's great to learn. It's great to have a lot of theory, knowledge, technique, but don't forget to make music. Yeah,
and have fun. The point is to have fun and express yourself and get it done. And, you know, there's always people like, you know, us, you know, we're both really open to meeting new people online. So if anyone's watching this and you want to have a conversation, you want to discuss, you want to collaborate, you want to learn something, we're you know, open people, and we're open to that. So don't be afraid to reach out to people. I know that some people can be hostile. I'll say hostile, but like they can be, like cold or, not respond, or at times maybe even rude when they respond. But not everybody's like that. And there are a lot of people that are willing to connect and looking to connect with people and share insight and share experience and perspective.
That's how we got together, like more than a couple of years ago. And I was just listening to your music on Facebook group, I think, and I reached out, and that's how like all the patterns artists, we all got to meet this way, just by reaching out. So do reach out to other people. Do reach out to us if you want. That's cool, and it's better. Like your music is gonna get better if you make music with other people, and not especially collaboration, but just talk about music. Just compare and exchange. And,
like any scientific research,
Yeah, and it's more fun when you share it.
Yeah.
Internet is amazing for that. So so last but not least,
Mr. Jeff Lauber.
Yeah.
I do want to take a second to acknowledge, and I don't know if you saw this, but Jeff was on the radio yesterday. He was on CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Channel for Montreal. He was interviewed by this guy Duke Eatman.
Can you find it online? Like the interview?
If you go on Jeff's Facebook profile, well, to anybody that doesn't have Jeff on Facebook, to you, Emmanuel, if you go on Jeff's Facebook profile, he posted it on his profile photo, like a link for it. To anybody else, to anybody else, if you look up Jeff Lauber, Lauber, on YouTube, and you look up full interview, you'll find a really great interview he did. He talks about his new album, Tell. I've known Jeff for a few years now. We also met very, very, very randomly, and we've been musical soulmates ever since. So give it a listen. And I was gonna say he was on there. He actually mentioned me a couple times. I was really grateful for that. And the radio host brought up Sela because my name's like featuring Sela on one of the tracks that they were playing. So he's like, "Oh, who's this Sela?" And I was like, "Oh, wow." I was excited to be shouted out. So shout out to Jeff for shouting me out to Duke, and shout out to Duke for asking about Sela, because I'm just rambling now.
I've just shared just now the YouTube link on the Patterns Facebook page. So check it out.
Awesome.
Check it out. Yeah.
Cool. So without further ado, this is Jeff Lauber from his album Tell. This is Anyone Home. Gotta love Jeff for his super, super clean mix. His super clean tone. It's lo-fi and it's not, I love it. That bass gets me every time. I never expect it, and then I'm always like, oh.
I don't know why the chorus reminds me of Hotel California.
It reminds you of what?
Hotel California.
Yeah.
Hotel California. It was one of my father's favorite.
It's very Hotel California. Actually, I never thought of it, but yeah. What's great about Jeff too is I know he's a multi-instrumentalist, and that he did everything you hear through his whole album. There's no sampling. It's all him. Every instrument's him. Most of the mixing on the album's him. I did a couple mixes, but pretty much most of it is him. He really, this album was really a coming of age album for Jeff, I think, in terms of being a producer as well as being an engineer. Cool. All good things towards Jeff.
Yeah.
I love in this track in particular, I love the clean sounds. I love the drums being just like absolutely just dry, like percussion hits. Like just
Yeah.
like a, it's like not like a,
I love
like,
the snare. Like, in
same.
particular. Kick
Yeah.
snare combo, like, yeah, it works.
Yeah.
It's just in your face, just enough.
Yeah.
And it's there. Yeah, it's a great album, and some of it, not all of it, has that lo-fi hip hop feel. It's you have oh, sorry, I am getting tired a little bit, but you have many influences you can hear in the album, and it's quite a journey to listen to. So yeah, do check it out.
Yeah, I really like that Jeff chose to not be limited by genre on this album. It's very multi-genre, it's like, and like for me, because I work with him a lot and I was kind of around when he was refining some of these tracks, and I know him, I just know him as a person. I know that like, for example, there's a lot of, if you listen to some of the vocal tracks, like I don't know how many times I looked at Jeff and I was like, man, you must have listened to Pet Sounds by Beach Boys, like that album. I was like, dude, there's so many different moments in this album that are like very Beach Boys. There's so many moments that I'm like, wow, this is kind of like Tame Impala. Wow, this is kind of lo-fi hip hop. Wow, this is very James Blake. Wow, this is, you can tell if you listen closely, you can see where he pulls his influence from, and yet at the same time, it's completely unique.
It is, but it's very important, as we were saying before. Like with part of your tool is also the music you listen to. Like it's very, very important to not only listen to the music that you make in the same genre, but also like explore. Like you don't care what people think. Like I like, for example, I like country music. I don't know country music a lot, but I like, I enjoy it. I don't know why. I enjoy it, and classical music and jazz, especially, like you can't really go wrong if you listen to a little bit of classical music and jazz music, and there's like I really like jazz, but I didn't really like classical music up to a point, and then I realized I really liked movie soundtrack, but movie soundtrack is pretty much the same thing as like late 19th century, early 20th century classical music. So if you like movie soundtrack, stuff like Star Wars and Indiana Jones and that kind of stuff, you can listen to any like classical music from the 19th century. You will enjoy it, and you have beautiful pieces, and the Romantic era, piano, whether it's piano or orchestral, and then you can get into for example early 20th century classical music that starts to touch a little bit into what then became jazz, and there is some overlap. I like to compare artists such as Debussy with or maybe even more so Chopin with jazz pianist Bill Evans. You have this lyricism within the music. There's a lot of overlap, and when you think about, like, especially in lo-fi hip hop, like Bill Evans, you hear him all the time in lo-fi hip hop. Like it's the most easy kind of, because it's so musical. It's jazz, but at the same time, it's very musical. It's very communicative, and I feel like in half of the lo-fi hip hop tutorials, on SP4, like half of them use Bill Evans samples, and yeah, it's so great to listen to a lot of music like rock and roll, and I know early '90s rock, Nirvana, stuff like that. That's good shit. That's historic,
Yeah.
Disco.
And listening to music is the same as learning anything else about music, in that you absorb stuff and you put it in that toolbox,
Yeah, the thing, like, people like to say, "Oh, I don't like this genre. I don't like this genre." But the truth is, like, chances are people who listen to this podcast, you like hip hop, right? And of course, some people who tell you, "Oh, I don't like hip hop. It's always the same," and they then mention to you like the worst hip hop you can imagine. Like the pop, like sugary, like top 50 kind of track, and you knowing what hip hop really is, the very good artists, the very good like Quasimoto and stuff like that, and but most people who say they don't like hip hop, it's just like you saying you don't like rock. You don't know rock. Get into that, because there are very good musicians who make extremely good rock music or blues music or country music. Christian country music. Like there is some good music in there also. It's not because like you've heard 2 or 3 songs that were like kind of the most popular. And you didn't like them. Of course you didn't like them. You wouldn't like the most popular, like some of the most popular hip hop songs, even though you love hip hop. You know what I mean?
It's important to not ride any sort of like. There's no stigma around listening to a type of music. I know where I came from. It was either you listen to like rock, classic rock, or you listen to country, and it was like oil and water. Most people, they didn't mix the two. It was like you either were a classic rock person or you were a country music person. And if you hung with people that listen to classic rock and like metal, and you talked about country, they just belittled you, and vice versa. Like there's no stigma around listening to something and enjoying it. I know I had resistance to enjoying country music for a long time, and then I just like surrendered to the fact that I appreciate it, and I kind of got rid of that stigma. And I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I mean, by all means, you don't judge any genre by its worst artists and its worst music. Yeah. Country music is the same. Every genre of music is the same. There's good in every genre. You just have to look for it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All right. So that was quite interesting. I was afraid that we would lose some of the vibe that we had in the first recording, but
there was a lot of good. A lot of good that came out from it. It's actually like we absorbed the first recording, and it's truly a podcast, 1.5. This is the evolved version of the previous one.
Yeah. And it's nice. So so this is going to be the first video on the new YouTube channel, right?
Yeah.
So we are going to need some support from you, from you people who are listening. So if you can subscribe, hit the bell, because we mean to do more of these. So we were talking about making a different playlists. So there will be a Beyond Lo-Fi Volume 2 and 3 and so on. We were considering maybe other kind of playlists with other kind of aspects of music. So I'm not sure exactly what direction it's going to take, but we are going to do our best to be regular and have new content often. Make sure you also check out our Facebook page, because that's where we're gonna advertise all the new release, and that's where you're going to be having all the news. We have Instagram, which is patterns.ooo, which is also our website. So patterns.ooo. We can check out all the artists of the collective. You can please do reach out to us if you want to talk, if you want to submit some music for playlist or anything really. Or if you just want to say hi, we are easy to find on Facebook, on Instagram, on I'm going to put all the links in the description anyway. You can go on the website. You'll have all the contact information.
And if you have any suggestions or feedback about how we could do it better, or other podcasts that we could do in the future, we're 100% open. This is all new territory for us. So help us pioneer something new and fresh in the comments below.
It's going to be cool. And yeah. All right.
Keep it real, internet audience, and see you next time.
Until next time. Peace out.